Welcome to Eye on the Illini. This is Mike Kegley here with Kedrick Prince. Kedrick, we got one of the more sedate 98-point games that Illinois has played. I want you to talk a little bit about the excitement that you experienced this afternoon.
Well, it was kind of a barn burner. No, that was tough to watch. It was kind of I expected that. The players went through the motion, and I'm glad that Coach Underwood scheduled it because it gave a chance to. It will give a chance. It gave a chance to players like Thomas Love and Maya Halo and Brandon Lee to get back into playing a little bit. It's different. I mean, and even though Ivicic played today and he only played 21 minutes, I guess. He didn't look like himself, but he's getting there. That's what these games before. It was just a game where you can fine tune things. You want to respect Long Island, but that's what they accomplished what they wanted to today, I believe.
Yeah, I thought so too. And I, again, this is a game that's going to be a challenge for guys to get up for, especially coming after Alabama, and you've got UConn next week. But I think it's necessary to get these guys, especially all the guys who've been injured, to get them some time on the court. I think that's a key, and I think these type of games have a value, particularly. And I don't think they plan, in case we're injured. But boy, it's nice to have them ready to go in this situation. Gives them a couple games to get ready, because that UConn game is going to be a barn burner.
I liked about it because it was a starting lineup that you're probably going to see through the rest of the season, unless Petrovic, gets inserted somewhere. But the starting five was good. You want to start to build that team camaraderie. You want to have the starting five play together. Coach Underwood was asked after the Alabama game about Thomas Law playing with David and what it would look like. And there was a couple of high post actions tonight that I saw, and it was easy because it was Long Island. They had no size, but I'm really curious to see how that's going to transpire when they play against better teams. But again, it was today's game accomplished what they wanted. One of the other things that, I don't want to minimize, Coach Underwood liked the quick turnaround, like an NCAA tournament style. So I think that part of it's great too, so the players could see. And I thought Keaton Wagler bounced back really well today himself as well.
Yeah, I thought so as well. And let's talk a little bit about the stat sheet. Illinois ended up shooting 63% from the field compared to 53 for 38 for Long Island. Illinois was at a really nice. I guess the 3-point percentage cooled off. They ended up at 31% from the three. Long Island heated up to go 36. In terms of free throws, Illinois was 73 versus 57. Turnovers, 12 for Illinois, 17 for Long Island. Illinois had 28 points off of turnovers compared to 14. Total rebounds, Illinois won that 40-22. Defensive rebounds, 27-13. Offensive rebounds, 13-9. Second chance points, 17-5. Bench points, 31-27. Long Island had the advantage there. Points in the paint, 68 for Illinois, 24 for Long Island. Fast break, Long Island actually won that one, 7-3. Blocks, 11-5 for Illinois. Steals, 11-9 for Long Island. And assists, 15-8 for Illinois. It was tied twice in the game. The lead changed 3 times, and Illinois was in the lead for 36 minutes, 36 seconds of a 40-minute game. So there's really no statistics other than I'm not certain. I don't think anybody got nuggets. Maybe they got they came close on one attempt, but so I think there was really nothing that Illinois did that was surprising. And they needed to do this. And this is probably the difference between a Brad Underwood team and some of the coaches in the past, is they do tend to take care of these things, and we don't have to worry about the weird upset.
No, and you could tell today that you knew that was going to be the situation when the game started. I mean, it's. I don't want to be disrespectful to Long Island. It was a BTN plus game, because it's football Saturday. You're not playing a highly ranked opponent. I look at Stojakovic, who caught fire the second half. I want to mention something about him, and on our message boards, and holidays are coming up, so people, please come join us. We have a lot of different professionals on our board, and we disagree. And Mike, and I want to know your opinion on this. I think what Stojakovic did against Alabama was great. I saw him go one-on-one today, and I think he's a tough matchup. A lot of people, other people, professionals say he's becoming a black hole. I don't see it that way. I see you have to get buckets, and he's a go-to guy. And I don't think he forced anything. I really don't. Did he score every single time? No, but his percentage was pretty high. Would you like to see him pass and kick it out more? Would you like to have a go-to guy who's aggressive enough and who's, obviously he's effective at what he's doing? We just have mixed opinions on it. I personally like to see him do what he's doing.
Yeah, I thought it was an interesting game overall, and I thought out there, the one thing that we always talk about, Ked, and you've talked about it too, as a former guy who's done a lot of coaching. We have been in a, you can influence people by having them sit next to you when you're not happy with them. And I thought the one thing that I liked was that there was a few times when the defense was bad where people got sat down. And when you're playing a team like this, again, a developmental game, one that you shouldn't lose, you've got to turn it into a learning experience. And I think some of the guys may have learned that defense is important. I don't know. How do you look at that, Ked, in terms of how did you use the bench as a tool when you were coaching?
You want to use it as motivation, which is good, and also you want to develop your bench. I'm glad you mentioned that, because I wanted to say this earlier. In years past, Coach Underwood's never done that. He's not used his bench a lot, and this time I thought he did. I thought there was times last year where you got in foul trouble, you want to develop your bench, and this time you saw him sub, and you saw Brandon Lee get in, and I don't know if the years past you would have seen that. So you want to develop your bench, and that's what these games are for, to develop your players, to see what they got. I still don't think Petrovic is 100% healthy. I know he's getting there. You can see he wants to do something, and his mind's telling him he can do stuff, and then his body's telling him something different. But you want to get the bench, because there's going to be games where there's foul trouble, players aren't playing well, and you're going to have to rely on them. And you want them to be in the game to know what that's like, instead of just throwing them in there all at once. When they played against Alabama, I think they got lucky with Petrovic, because he had 1-3 and he ended up having 5 assists in limited action.
Yeah, I agree. And looking at him today, it's like you said, I think his brain is going at a pace that's faster than his body can right now, which is fine for a guy with that type of experience level. You would expect him to figure a lot of things out, and I think he's going to need to round himself into place too. It's a lot different. Your heartbeat's a lot different during a game like this than it is when you're out there, on the practice floor. Yeah. Here's an interesting comment, and I will say that Stojakovic does go ISO a lot. He also gets to the basket. I mean, he doesn't have he's a good athlete, don't get me wrong, but he doesn't have the pure athleticism of a guy like, Terrence Shannon Jr., but he does manage to get to the court or get to the basket pretty good. So I've found it for him to it's been interesting, because he is finding different ways to beat guys, but I do have concerns in the Big Ten that may be a lot harder to pull off with the defense that's played in the Big Ten, both the man-to-man defense on you and the help defense that you'll encounter in the Big Ten as well.
Okay, Frederick Data, I'm glad you mentioned that, but I'm going to counter that. Here's how I'm going to counter that. Alabama's one of the best teams in the country. He did it against them. He did. Is it good? Is it bad? I don't know, but I will tell you this: when they needed a bucket, and the team was struggling. I like having a guy like that. Is that going to work every single game? I don't know, but then again, it might, because he's really good at finishing around the basket. So to say today Long Island is not the competition Alabama is, I mean, let's call a spade, but he did it against them, and he looked really good doing it, and it didn't look tough for him. They put him in a situation to where he's going to be able to take a guy one-on-one. And I'll tell you the part of his game that you haven't seen yet, and if you want to get on YouTube, you can see it. He's spinning and getting to the basket right now, but he has like a 7 or 8 foot pull-up, and he's just as effective with that. So if there's a bigger defender on him, and the team starts to, defend him different, that is a part of his arsenal. And I do think he'll kick it out. I don't think he's had to shoot over 2 or 3 people. If you go back and look at both games, that one-on-one massive isolation was there for him. It was one-on-one. It wasn't 2-on-1. To me, that's when it becomes a force issue, is when he's trying to shoot over 2 or 3 people. And I can assure you, if he does that and he's not effective with it, he'll be sitting on the bench, where they'll put someone else in that position.
Yeah, no, I agree there. I also think when it comes to it, once you get your shoulder in front of the other guy as a defender, when he's on you, you get that shoulder advantage. You almost have to take it. And I think that's where Stojakovic, again, I don't know if his straight line speed, he's no Io or Terrence Shannon Jr., but I will say when he sees an opening, he can go from like 0 to 60 really quick. And so I think many times he's in there, kind of reading what he wants to do. Once he gets that advantage, he turns the jets on, and it turns into a layup. And it's hard for me to not want him to take those opportunities.
Yeah, because right now, if you look at this entire team, I think that, I shouldn't say that, but you got guys who can get to the basket. I think Keaton Wagler can get to the basket. I think Petrovic can. Obviously, Kylan Boswell can. But you want to have multiple options. You want to have options to where you want to put the pressure on the defense. And I can tell you right now, I know UConn is scouting that. They're trying to figure out how they can stop him. But if it's one-on-one, he's really good at getting to the free throw line. Now, we saw last week that didn't work out so well. I think he was 2 for 5. But I'll tell you this, I would like to have a guy on my team like that than not have a guy on my team like that. And I do think he is going to be able to score effectively in the Big Ten. His three-point shooting, Brad Sturdy and I, our colleague, we talked about this with you, Mike, on a couple podcasts. We'd like to see his three-point shooting percentage go up. Now, I think he made 1 or 2 against Alabama. I know he made 1, with better supporting cast. If he gets his three-point shot to where he's shooting 35, 36%, he's going to be a tough kid to guard.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Totally agree with that. And, when we look at some of the things that are going on around the league, I think you see this team is going to be able to score. I think some of the inside power, I guess. I know Usage isn't feeling good now, so I get that. But I would like to see a little more aggression. He missed an easy layup, which happens to everybody, but when you're 7'1" and you have a 3-foot shot, I just prefer you not to fade backwards. Go in a little bit more. And of course, again, he's going to get more aggressive as he feels better. I also thought feeding those guys all those lobs, that gives somebody something that they have to worry about on film, so that when you do run those plays, you might open up more things for Kylan, or you might be able to get the ball back outside for an open shot because people are dropping in to help out on either Ivasic, who did a nice job of, against obviously a smaller team, of going in there and basically making something happen.
It was a different look, and I like that part of it. I would like to see out of this offense, I like to see more sets. I think, I watched the film against the Alabama game and listened to a lot of different experts on the game. That was one of the adjustments that Oates made against Illinois in the second half. They took things away from them. So there's one part of this offense which is good because they score a lot of points. I wish they'd run a lot more sets. I do think they did run one good set late in the game for whom Rick House to get a 3, but you want to be able to run those things where you can slip the screens. And I know people don't like Bruce Rubber, but he was really good at things like that. So that part of the game I would like to see, because you want to stop the bleeding. If you're a good team, you want to compete. You want to be able. You should avoid 5, 6, 8 minute scoring stretches where you're not putting the ball in the basket, when you're not scoring.
Yeah. This one, I guess, I don't know. I'd have to look up Underwood's record. He's beat, more top 25 teams than many coaches at Illinois. So I guess, that one I have a hard time with. But you're supposed to beat up the bad teams, and then the great ones are hard to beat, or else they wouldn't be great teams. So I guess I have less issues with this than some people. Clearly, you want to go on a run in the NCAA tournament. And when you see all the national championship banners that are hanging in the State Farm Center, it's not a very easy thing to do because there aren't very many hanging up there. So Illinois has, I guess, because of the fact that he hasn't had a big run in the NCAA tournament, Underwood's going to have to answer this question until he has a big run in the NCAA tournament. Ked, what do you think on that?
I'm not disagreeing with you, but I'm going to throw a few things at you. They went to the Elite Eight. They lost to the team that won it all.
Yep.
Iowa State was a big win. I'm sorry. If you think that was playing a junior high school or high school team, sorry, that wasn't. You're supposed to beat the team you're supposed to beat. And understand this. No team is going to win every game. I mean, it's possible. But I could have swore I just watched UConn lose at home to Arizona. So should they get mad at him? Or I just watched Michigan State just demolish Kentucky, who's one of the best teams in the country. It is going to happen. Illinois just beat Texas Tech. So you're not going to win every game. I mean, do I expect Illinois to beat a Tennessee at some point, or a UConn, on Arkansas, Missouri? Sure, I do. You're not going to win every game, but they're going to get their share, and he's had some big wins underneath his belt. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I think he, in particular, I think the last couple of years Illinois has struggled with the injury bug, and which I find very fascinating because this team's in really good shape, and they got the best strength and conditioning coach, or one of the best in the country. And so it's been frustrating to see the injury bug hit so often. But, you've got a situation here where going up against UConn is a very tough team. And when you're going up a team that's a perennial top 5 team, won, 6 titles or something in the last 25 years, you know that when you put them on the schedule, that's not a W. And more likely it's going to be an L. But you either want to play good teams or you don't. And then Tennessee, that's going to be a tough one because that is historically, if you go travel to the different arenas around the U.S., it's one of the toughest college arenas out there. So I don't have a problem with Underwood doing that. And yeah, you want to see the team win. But in the end, as a very old Illini fan, I would much rather this team learn from those losses and then have a run in the end of the year versus being the best team in the country in December and then watching it slip away later on.
I'm going to tell Illinois fans this. Whether you like Brad Underwood or not, whether you're happy with the way the program is or not, that's your right and your choice. But I will tell you, this is a fact. Tennessee wouldn't play Champaign last year. Illinois they weren't able to schedule Arkansas or Alabama. You know why? Because the program stunk. UConn wouldn't have played Illinois. If UConn was looking for a Big Ten team before Brad Underwood got this ball rolling, it would have been Ohio. It would have been Ohio State or Michigan State, somebody like that. Because Illinois is one of the best teams in the country. Now, whether it's good enough for you or not, that's up to you. I understand that, but they can play anybody in the country. And people will schedule a home against them or on a neutral court. They know how big of a win the Illinois basketball program is. So you got to look at the big picture. Yes, I would love to see them go to the Final Four. And we all believe, I think most of us believe, that if they didn't run into UConn, they probably would have went to the Final Four that year. I'm not one of those guys to where I just want to get rid of a guy because the grass isn't always greener on the other side. I wasn't happy with John Gross. They may get a guy in the program and they may end up going south like that. You hired a guy like Tim Beckman. How'd that work out for you? You got to stop getting mad at some of the little things that you can't control. Purdue and Illinois has been the two of the most successful Big Ten teams in the Big Ten. Neither one of those schools have won a Big Ten title. But Purdue will play a national title. Excuse me. They'll play. Everybody will play them. It's easy for Matt Painter to schedule those teams. Everybody can do it. So I just wish people would look at the big picture and think where the program is and where it could be. Now, Mike, you mentioned injuries, and yes, teams have injuries. I get it. I understand. But this team has not been whole yet all season. I mean, they haven't. And I think if you have a healthy, 75% usage, and you make free throws, you might have a better chance. And the Alabama game is a different outcome, but that didn't happen. So you move on and you try to get the next one. I don't want to see Illinois playing Jackson State and Long Island every game, and then you watch Michigan State and Purdue out there, and Michigan's playing all the top teams in the country. You want to see your program like that, and if you want to continue to have recruits, you better schedule those games, because nobody's going to come to you play Long Island 8 or 9 times. That's not attractive for anybody, and it gives you a false sense of hope of how good your team is.
Yeah, and I will say one thing too, that prestige, when it's, like, for example, Michigan State gets a lot of recruiting value out of, playing on the that aircraft carrier. I mean, that's just nice. And you look like you're one of the best teams in the Big Ten, or best teams in the country, because you're chosen to do that. I think headlining at Madison Square Garden, I know we don't care a lot. We're Midwesterners, but that's a big deal in New York when a team comes in to play at Madison Square Garden. And if you want to go back to the ancient times, I'm just trying to give you a way, but basically, how Notre Dame became a national school was when Newt Rockne would take that team anywhere in the United States. They'd go play USC on the West Coast. They'd go play, Rutgers on the East Coast. And they got a name by being, a team that was so good they had, they would travel anywhere. And I think, it's not quite the same example, but I do think that Illinois gets a lot of street cred. And then when you have guys like Orlando Antigua, who can recruit anywhere, but he's particularly good on the East Coast, you want to give him that New York City game, because that guy's got contacts all over the place, and he can pick up a phone and say, hey, get your kids down here and watch this game. And that makes a difference in recruiting in the long run. That's how you build that credibility for what your team is. And sometimes having a gun and will travel, like the old Western, that's kind of how you prove you're the tough guy, by showing up and doing that. And they're not going to win all those. And I'm sure Underwood wants to get more than his fair share. But those are also teams that are very good.
Mike, I want to comment on a comment that Kenny made, McCoy 396. I kind of agree with him a little bit. To start the season, there was a lot more opportunities for them to score in transition. When they play against better competition, I don't see that as much. I think and Coach Underwood did mention this, they value every possession. But I don't know if you want to turn that faucet on and turn it off every single time. I like to see them run the ball down the court. They're not pushing it like they did to start the season. I think you're missing scoring opportunities, but they're not shooting the ball great from the perimeter like they started the season. I think if they're making shots, and again, I think that's a great question, Kenny. If they're making shots, I think you'll see that. Because late in the season last year, we remember the Oregon game, they just came down and they were chucking up threes and they were going in. But I thought there was in the second half at the Alabama game, I thought keep pushing the ball, put the pressure on them, because that's what they're doing to you. But I think Illinois they knew they could win, but they were playing not to lose, I guess, if that makes sense, and not playing free, because that is good basketball, because they can run with people. People look at this team and they stereotype and say they're not athletic enough. They're not as slow as anybody, as people think. They didn't get blown out by Alabama. I think they have the players who are good enough and who I think are quick enough to defend some of those guys and beat them off the dribble. I just want to see more of it, that's all. And I think it's a learning experience for a guy like Keaton Wagler. He was able to do some things that was easy for him against these teams. And now learning how to protect the ball against better competition, that's why you play these good teams, and that's why you play the bad teams.
Yeah, and I think ultimately, in the transition thing, controlling the board is a big part of it. and you got to get the boards if you want to run. And the other part, which I think is really crucial, is you have to be able to get control the ball on the break. And right now I would like to see him take a little bit more risks. And I understand how the worst thing in the world is to have a possession with no shot attempt. When you turn it over, or you get a steal, so the other team steals the ball, that's frustrating because you allow a lot of bad things to happen. But I do think getting a little bit more, taking a little more chances is good, especially I think with a team that's relatively good passing. So I think there's some opportunities there for the team, but I think Underwood wants to do it when he wants to do it, and that's kind of a key. You're as a coach, you're going to kind of unleash him, because he certainly didn't mind Io or Terrence Shannon Jr. taking the ball out on the break and doing whatever they want with it. So some of it is the players have to earn the confidence of the coach as well. So I think that's probably something that people think about. And Illinois is good enough program to those teams to schedule and beat. Yeah, but it has to mean something. They're not picking up the phone. And this is the part that when I get fans who just want to piss and moan, I don't mind that. But it's like the bottom line is people aren't calling up Iowa to play in big games. They're not calling up Northwestern. They're not calling up Minnesota. They're basically calling Illinois, Michigan, Purdue, Indiana, maybe Wisconsin,
and that's it.
And that's it. The rest of them are
now UCLA, but that's it, Mike.
Yeah. So if you want to complain about Illinois not being good enough, then fine, go ahead. You can sit and go, think about what Illinois was under John Gross when you couldn't even get out of the Big Ten tournament looking respectful. And like I said, in this case, they are good enough that they can potentially beat them, but that's what happens in a game. And Texas Tech came up here and they thought they were going to win and they lost. So it is what it is.
Mike, I would much rather be where they are now, because let's think about it. You mentioned Minnesota to me. Do you think if Minnesota, Alabama would want to play Minnesota on the neutral, why? What would be the point? They'd win by 50. It would not benefit.
Or if they lost, what would happen if they lost? It would be like, what the hell happened to you?
Yes, and if you lose to Illinois and they're ranked 8th in the country, that's not bad. You know what I'm saying? So that's the one thing you have to look at. Illinois, they've arrived. They're not what they used to be. Because we follow them and we cover them, they're not just a podunk team, and I'm really sorry. I mean, they're better than what people give them credit for. It's much easier to watch. Do I agree with every single thing that happens? No. I would like to see them run the ball more. I would like to see them run some sets more. I would like to see them make defensive assignments. I'd like to see them make more adjustments with that, even though I'm starting to see it now a lot more with Coach Crocker being involved. But there's more than one way to skin a cat. And my way may not work either. I'm not saying it does. But here's the other one. We all disagree on what should happen for how Stojakovic should be used. I mean, how many, should he go ISO? So it's all different. I'm totally okay with it, with how things are going. It beats the alternative. I mean, I love seeing my team that I cover and team that I like, on the national spotlight. And I finally heard Coach Bielema, a coach at Illinois, say it does matter if you're ranked, because of the benefits of especially now with all the TV rights and stuff. So you got a program that's ranked, and they've been that way. You got rivalries with Purdue now that you didn't have before, because they're one of the best teams in the Big Ten. I like the competition. And I know Illinois, teams circle Illinois on their schedule. They want to beat them. How I know that? Because there's a kid that's playing for Michigan State that I know that's important to him. So that's the way I look at it, guys. Sorry.
Yeah, and I will say, when I take a look at it, we go back to this, and John Gross, the money he had or didn't have, trust me, he had opportunities. He made choices as a coach.
Mike, just 1 second. John Gross didn't have millions of dollars to buy players. That was 10 years ago. Other teams didn't either. So how were they? They didn't have that same opportunity either. He was playing on the same field that everybody else was playing. He couldn't recruit really, really well, and he wasn't a good fit for Illinois. Sorry about that.
Yeah. Well, but I do think again, you've got to you can look at this situation. Everybody has millions of dollars now. Georgetown has millions of dollars. We can prove that. You have BYU, who has like outlandish amounts of money. You have Duke, who the Wall Street Journal wrote an article about the cabal of people who help get players to Duke. You've got Illinois is a well-funded team, probably top 15. And since Underwood's been here, they pretty much, after he had to flush the system before there was the transfer portal working instantaneously, Illinois has been a top 15 team pretty much for the whole time he's been here. Now you have to figure out, how do you take it from top 15 to top 5 to 10 and move it up? And that's hard. But again, this thing that Illinois has more money, I just wonder how delusional a fan is when I start taking a look at like Illinois having more money than some of those Kentucky. Seriously, you just look at the dollars, it's hilarious. And ultimately what Underwood has said he's looking for in recruits is he likes to play, and obviously this is not possible to do every time, but he would like positionless basketball, and he'd like everybody to be able to shoot. He's said that numerous times.
Mike, I'm sorry. Can you bring up, if you're okay with this, Williams comment?
Which one?
The last one about the money. Williams and Sarr. So let me tell you something about those players. That was strict. They were locks. Okay. Whether you like me, don't like me, believe me or not, Mike can sit here and vouch for this. When I get information, he knows it is always solid. And I'm going to tell you facts. Those two players were out of Illinois because of the first three little signs right there that you mentioned, William, because it is. And let's think about this for a second. You look at BYU. How in the hell can a program like that get those players unless money's involved? Mike just gave you the rundown. It's if you're going to pay people money, because Donnie Sarr, he was coming to Illinois. It was a lock, done deal, but he wanted a large amount of money. And I would be honest with you, I don't blame Coach Underwood for that. If I'm going to give a large amount of money, me personally, or even Brett Bielema, to a player, it is going to be to a player like a Terrence Shannon or somebody who is proven, or like a Andre Stojakovic, who is the only McDonald's All-American that Brad Underwood has ever coached, truth be told, and he's a proven scorer, just like Terrence Shannon was. I can understand why you want to give guys like that money. I can understand why you want to give a guy like Luke Altmaier a decent amount of money if he's proven himself. The amount of money that these kids are asking, that they were asking people to do, I'm sorry. And if somebody else wants to pay it, great. I mean, I get it. I understand, but it's not my money. And so I can't sit here and tell people to donate money. I mean, are the pocketbooks out there? Does Illinois have a wealthy alumni base? They sure do. But I tell you this, no matter what happens, the Illinois football and men's basketball, women's basketball program, whether they're number one, they're always going to compete with this athletic director, because they're always going to be in the hunt. They're never going to – I don't think you're going to see the women's programs, because they're kind of rebuilding because they lost everybody, but you're going to see them compete. They had a great recruiting class. You're going to see – you're losing a lot of talent on the football program. I can assure you he has built a program that could potentially win 10 games back-to-back. I don't know if this ever happened in Illinois history before. So in football, the basketball program is established. They're going to compete, but – paying $9-10 million for a kid in high school that's never played college basketball, I wouldn't do that. Because you don't know. There are guys right now, and the name slips me. I know there's one at Gonzaga. I think there's one in North Carolina. There are top 30 basketball recruits in the country. I'll find the names. They can't get off the bench. I'll use the women's program. They recruited a girl named Divine Burridge, who was one of the top 15 players in the country. She plays 5-6 minutes a game for LSU. She can't get off the bench. So what would happen if you pay a person like that $1 million or $800,000 and they don't pan out? That's why you don't do it.
No, and I think it's an interesting thing because again, it's easy for Illinois fans to sit back and say, "Well, you should have paid for, you should have paid for Sar, or you should have paid for AJ, or and pretty soon you've got a $20 million basketball team." And look, under this new salary cap, which doesn't look like it's going to work as it's intended, if you look at some of, like, for example, LSU's already promising Lane Kiffin that they'll spend $25 million a year on the football program when the whole school athletic program is supposed to have a salary cap of like 20 to 22 million. So you already see that things are going awry on this. And so what I would love to do, if you could go ahead, and I just wish they would have to, I don't know that you need any rules, because you go back to the first days of football and people were getting paid to play when they weren't supposed to be. So I don't know that you're ever going to stop human beings from trying to win and make more money by putting more money, in, so they can do that. What I'd like to see is some transparency where they just make a team, they go through and say, look, we just need to know what you're spending, so that fans know, A, is my school all in or not, and B, they would also know, like, is this player or this coach worth what he's being spent? Now, the biggest example that I use for that IlliniGuys fans are used to, is how good would Brett Bielema be if he had Ryan Day's payroll, and how good would Ryan Day be if he had Brett Bielema's payroll? My guess is that you could be in a situation where Brett Bielema might even do a better job than Ryan Day has, because Ryan's had the best roster in college football for 4 of the last 6 years, and he has one title to show for it. So maybe if Brett Bielema was there, maybe he'd have 3. We'll never know. But I do think the key is you have to figure out in basketball how to spend the money in the best way that's possible. And Brad Underwood doesn't have as much money as the guy at Kentucky, Pope, or other coaches out there. So he's got to try to find a way to spend it the best he can. Now, we're all going to have disagreement on how much better, or how people or coaches could do things better. And we'll never be able to prove that. The difference between us when we put information out there is I still will go to the wall that Brad and Ked are sourced better than anybody else covering Illinois, and most people covering the Big Ten. So that part, we can talk about. But when Brad Underwood is trying to put together, a roster, he doesn't have infinite amounts of dollars. So anybody who thinks that Brad Underwood's, just like, well, I'm going to pay $2 million for this guy and $6 million for that guy is just crazy. But he does, when you have to go to these people every year and try to get the NIL dollars, these coaches are under a lot of pressure to win and get those things done. And that's what you have to deal with.
Mike, let me comment before we add right on that. I really want to, I think it was Brandon's, it was Kenny's comment. Love this comment, Kenny. You're on a roll today, buddy. Rutgers had arguably 2 of the best players in college basketball and didn't get in the tournament. That's why you don't do it. What did that benefit? Because they were on TV. They were always on TV. They're on the Big Ten network. It didn't benefit them. So it doesn't prove or guarantee you that you're going to win a national title, you're going to get in the tournament, or you're going to win the Big Ten. Yeah, they had some nice wins, and they beat Illinois. I get that. But that's why you don't do it. On the other side, you have kids who do pan out. AJ, the Manta, kid's outstanding. I mean, he looks every bit as good as Cooper Flagg was last year. But let's think about that. Darn well, all the money and all the programs in the country, he went to BYU. Darn well how much money that guy got. There's no way he wouldn't have. And I told people before, there's Illinois players that left the program, and BYU offered them a large amount of money. Where it's coming from, I don't know, and I don't blame the kids. I'm not mad about it. I think it's great, but I like the way Illinois. I like their approach. I just do, because you get a guy that's proven, like I said, Stojakovic. I know how good he is. I know people are sitting there freaking out about Petrovic. Let the kid get healthy, and if it's a bad take, it's a bad take. I trust my sources.
Well, the bottom line is I really am. I'm very much a cynic when it comes to this because I've followed this for 50 years, and this is probably one of the truest things. I don't see the SEC really following the salary cap, and they are publicly telling people that Lane Kiffin's going to get more money for his football team at LSU than is in the salary cap. Where's the SEC commissioner, who supposedly cares so much about college football? Where is he saying, hey, that's not right? He's not saying anything. So, and you think that Notre Dame and Ohio State and Michigan are going to go and throw Georgia and Alabama in there? They're going to go, gosh darn, we're out of money. So that 5-star tackle in Chicago is probably just going to have to go to Illinois. That's never going to happen. So I do agree with this, and I know it's cynical by me, but I don't understand how they're going to make a salary cap work unless there's only one way you make it work, and that's why if you actually make these guys employees and then you force the salary cap in that respect. And I don't see that's going on. Did Ohio State just get $100 million in public donation? Let me tell you something, Seth Gecko. If you think Illinois has the money to spend on football that Ohio State does, you just look like a moron, because they have been making the right decisions. And by right, I mean the decisions that are good for their football program. They've been doing it since the 1920s. Since 1950, they have 5 seasons that they haven't had a winning record. Illinois has had decades that they haven't had a winning record. 5 in 75 years. They do what is necessary to win. You notice I didn't accuse them. It doesn't matter whether it's cheating or not because they're successful and they don't get on probation. So the bottom line is they do what's needed to win for the football program. Can they afford more than Illinois? Yeah. They have reputedly between a $30 and $40 million payroll this year for their football team, and Illinois is between $6 and $9 million. I don't know how to explain anything else. It's just ridiculous. But the bottom line is they have more money. I'm not faulting them. They're fun to watch. I just like to know from a transparency if Ryan Day's coaching a $40 million team and Brett Bielema is coaching a $10 million team, so that you can judge coaches. When you're looking at the NFL, you're looking at coaches, you know who's good because they have the same salary cap. And if you in first place, you get the last pick in the draft. That doesn't work in college football. It's just different.
Mike, let me ask you this. I know it, and if you Google it, it's out there. There's some deep pockets alumni for the University of Illinois. They're just not spending it the way Ohio State is. Would you agree with that, or would you disagree with that?
Well, yeah, Illinois got a ton of people who want their name on academic buildings, and why not? They want to give, people want to give back to the university that helped them get a start. Certainly, they get the choice in how they want to do that. And let's face it, if you're as old as we are, Ked, the Illini in the 70s were as bad as any team has ever been. Then you had the 80s come around, and they got for Michigan and Ohio State, the 80s would be a bad decade. For Illinois, it's the one we put on a pedestal. and then when John Malkovich left, Illinois has had 3 good years since then, and until Brett Bielema got here, they were under a 40% winning percentage in football. Those are just facts. So the bottom line is why, Ohio State probably has more double-digit win seasons, maybe, than I don't know. Illinois wouldn't even compare on that since they've never even had back-to-back double-digit win seasons. I mean, it is scary, the difference, and it takes time, and then you build that. That's why I say Ohio State's made the right decision for their football program for 100 years, and Illinois has got to try to catch up. And even in basketball, you know, Lou Henson was never doing what Louisville was doing, you know, in those days. And I'm not saying that, you know, you had to attract talent, there's no doubt, but he wasn't in the class of Louisville, UNLV, Georgetown. I mean, a lot of these guys, it just wasn't. Or even the Fab Five there in Michigan. Um, it is what it is, and like I said, this is what I said. You know, William is willing to bet that Houston is spending less in Illinois. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't. That's why I'd love the transparency. So as fans, we would be able to know exactly what the difference is, because I think it would be more fun to actually know just how involved it is, and I do think it was good. And notice I didn't say was not. I just said he wasn't doing it to the level of some of the other programs. And if you really want to talk about the difference, go take a look. Go Google right now. You know, John Wooden's record year by year. And then magically 1963, 4 or 5, one of those years, I can't remember, I haven't done it in a while. Sam Gilbert got involved with the UCLA program. And then look what happened to Wooden's record after that. It's pretty incredible. He went from a solid coach who had over a 500 winning percentage to a guy who won, what is it, eight or 9 in a row, whatever it was that he won at UCLA. He had guys committing to go to UCLA who'd never, you know, from New York City, who'd never been to California, just verbal. Yeah, I'm going there. Sam Gilbert changed the UCLA program. And of course, if you read anything on college football, you can see like the SEC. I mean, they played hardball with dollars for years. That's why their teams are so good.
Mike, I want to comment about, I think it was Fedigator, about Henson paying his players. So I will say this. One of my good friends, I mean, not just me looking for clout or for a click, one of my good friends is Kenny Battle. And I'm going to tell you, the only thing he has ever told me that he's gotten from free, because he didn't get money, because he complains about that, the different times in the era, what he wants to do, free coffee, free meals, free McDonald's. That's what he got.
And I paid for a number of his beers at cans. So there was another freebie you got, kid. But the bottom line is like I said, I don't really care. I expect people to cheat to win. And I feel like the NCAA can't really monitor it. So why worry about it, and just go ahead and just make it transparent, and then you compete for titles. I really don't understand. And, you know, I really don't understand. And again, we aren't saying Brad Underwood is, you know, Phil Jackson, but compared to the people we've had in the past and where the program has been, you know, I don't think you can compare any coach right now coaching other than Rick Pitino to Bill Self. So I would say he's not a Bill Self, but you know, the bottom line is Bill Self felt like he had to leave Illinois so he could be Bill Self that we know at Kansas. And he was a fantastic coach. I think Underwood and Henson are very good coaches. And ultimately at Illinois, you're not going to be as well funded as the coach at Kansas. So
no, you're not. And Mike, I look at all the teams. That team with Terrence Shannon a few years ago was great with Domask and Coleman Hawkins. And I love the Ion Kofi team, but there's something about this team to me that I like. I do. There's just something different about it. It looks like they have the opportunity to do well. I will tell you this. I was upset that they lost to Alabama the other day, because I think when you get an opportunity to beat a team like that, when the seedings come out, that's what's going to matter. You want to get a good seed. You want to have an opportunity where you can go to a tournament and you don't have to run into a team like you did against UConn. You want to be different.
Yeah, I agree. Now, Tommy still looks hurt and slow, and I do think to an extent he's still recovering. I think there's no doubt about that. And so the thing you don't want to do with an injury like that is push him to the point where he re-aggravates it, as opposed to just getting back to shape. Is that fair, Ked?
Yes, I'm glad to hear him say that because I thought so too. They've not used him in any pick and pop action. That's what he's really good at. And I don't know if it could be the injury, but they did start him. If you look at him and the fans that saw him play last year, he's bigger. I hope gaining weight didn't hurt him, but I shouldn't say that because the first game of the year when he did play, he looked effective. Today he looked slow, and I thought he looked really, really slow against Alabama. So that's a really good observation. We're not going to know, but I think if Coach Underwood started him and played him, he should be healthy because I know they're not going to play players who aren't in the position where they shouldn't be able to play. But I will tell you this: he started today out of all the starters. Other than David, who came out of the game, David, because coach was mad at him, Ivisic only played 21 minutes. So maybe there's a little bit, there's something. And maybe they're bringing him on slowly. We don't know. There's another tune-up game before UConn, and I hope he is much more mobile. But he looked a lot slower to me today. He looks different right now. So that's a very good observation. I agree with that.
Well, and you take a guy and make him not be able to be as active for a month. That takes it out of you. And then I think people also forget, didn't he have a tonsillectomy too, Ked? And folks, tonsillectomies later in life are much harder than you might think it is. And I think actually, Brandon just brought it up here, tonsils and then going out and you get hurt. That tonsillectomy, don't ever underestimate that surgery, because I had it when I was 30 and it was a nightmare. Now, when we look at this, I think it's hard to say that for everybody in Chicago that it's never been cool, but I do know that there's a lot of kids that I met in college and stuff who were from Chicago who loved Illinois sports. But I do think that when you're dealing with something like Chicago, I think there's a few cities in the country that you can't really dominate, even if you're the local school. So I live in one of them. The Dallas area is not dominated by Texas. Everybody goes into Dallas to try to get players. Atlanta, used to live there. The whole country goes into Atlanta. It's like, and Chicago, New York, and LA, those 5 cities, they're almost like, think of them as regional capitals, Dallas is the Southwest capital, and LA is the West capital, and the Midwest capital, Chicago, the Southeast capital is Atlanta, and New York City is the East capital. So there's never been a way to totally dominate that. About the only time that somebody really dominated one of those areas was when Pete Carroll started to dominate out in USC, and then they started having some teams that were unholy, because then they would do the national and that. So I do think that makes it a little bit of a challenge. And I will be honest with you, the 80s, Illinois did a great job in basketball. But if you go back and you take a look at the state of Illinois recruiting rankings, even at the height of Mike White, he might pull in maybe 8 of the top 25 players in the state of Illinois, because you had Notre Dame, you had Michigan, and Ohio State would come in there. You had some national powers. It wasn't quite the same. It wasn't as easy to do it national, but you had the Alabama, the USC, the Penn States that would come in. And that in the 80s was before Iowa and Wisconsin. Well, Iowa was getting good and Wisconsin wasn't good yet, because those 2 schools have really got their tendrils in Chicagoland, and that's made it a little tougher as well. But you're right. Illinois did more there. And the other thing is, Ked, you're the recruiting guy, but Chicago hasn't produced as much from the basketball side in the last 10 years. It might be the worst 10 years for Chicago that we've seen.
The last big stud that come out that affected Illinois was Io and I guess Morez Johnson, because of the prep schools. I mean, you don't hear anything about Illinois high school basketball like you once did, and it was dominant. But prep schools are taking over everywhere, so it's not just the state of Illinois. I learned yesterday, and I forget the name of it, is United something. Iowa, the state of Iowa has a prep school, and I YouTubed it and watched the video on it yesterday. It looks like the best prep school you could possibly see. I could not believe. And there's one of the top players in the country is a 7-foot kid who's going to Houston next year. So the prep school scene is different. They have taken over. You got your traditional prep schools and stuff, but now they're popping up everywhere. So, and kids are going all over the place. I guess if you look at one of the most recent McDonald's All-American is Jeremy Frias Jr., who's at Michigan State. His brother, Jeremiah, who's having an unbelievable NBA career, left, but, he didn't stay in Chicago either. So these kids are leaving, and Mraz, Illinois was lucky to get him. He stayed all 4 years, but then he was going to go to a prep school. At least I know it was talked about. So that doesn't help. And the fact that maybe you have to give Illinois credit. Maybe they saw the writing on the wall. Maybe they saw it coming because they still recruit the state, Chicago, but they're not, married to it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean that is a crazy thing, and La Lumiere obviously, and of course Jeremiah went out to Arizona of the Fears brothers. You see a lot of that, and then of course you got IMG that gets a ton of people. So yeah, the whole basketball landscape has changed with these kids wanting to go in and play the top kids, and I'm not blaming them for that, but boy, it is a lot different than what we thought. Going back to the game, since we've been talking a little bit more about non-game things, Ked, how did you think about Lee coming back today? Because I know you're one of his biggest supporters. How did you think he looked?
I think he forced the issue a little bit, but that's expected because he hasn't played. And you look at the rotation, a lot of people have asked about the rotation. He's right now, for me, I think he's the last guy in that 9 or 10 man rotation because you got Milo and you got to make sure Kylan gets his minutes. Keaton's going to get his minutes. So I think he's a guy that you need to play early. When we started this podcast, that's one of the things I mentioned. In games like this, get him minutes, because if somebody gets injured again, and we know Illinois, injuries and Illinois basketball, Illinois sports go hand in hand. So getting a guy out there like that early to play, I think is good. But is he talented? Yes. I think he's in a numbers game right now. And I think when he is on the floor, he's the type of player to me where he needs to defend and not make mistakes and turn the ball over. That's going to keep him on the floor to get any extended minutes that he deserves with this team. This team is deep. I think they're talented. And I do like what they're doing. I think Coach Underwood, we've always given him credit for about making adjustments and with recruiting. I've never seen him play this many players this long. So kudos to him. I'm happy he's doing that.
Yep, that's perfect. So we're just about ready to wrap this up. Sturdy is having connection issues. Now, folks, we will be back, though. We will be back because today we're going to do a halftime show. We will be on at the half of the Wisconsin game. We will also be back on at the we'll also be back at the post game for Wisconsin as well. Ked, you want to talk wrap up here for just on your final thoughts on this game?
It was a good tune-up game. They got what they wanted out of it. They wanted to get some players some minutes, and I'm happy that they did that. If I had any concerns, any at all, I want to see the Avicias that we saw last year. That's my only concern. Everybody else, I'm not worried about. They look good. They're doing what they're supposed to be doing. I like the fact that a little bit that they pressured Keaton Walker a little bit. I thought they got loose with the ball a couple of times today. But if Illinois is going to do anything that the fans want and see the things that we want to see, they need him to be healthy. That's moving forward, and I hope he gets better each day.
Yeah, I think that's probably the most important thing as we go. And again, I like I said, this team to me, I got frustrated last season because Kasparis never really returned to form after whatever happened with that left wrist forearm. We never really saw him play at that level. I think maybe one game. And this year, I want to see Tomislav get back to normal and good, and Big Z, you want him not have to fight knee swelling up after every game. And you want to avoid those injuries, because I do think, as Ked said earlier, this team, it has its strengths and weaknesses. It's not the quickest team in the world, but they play well together. They play good help defense when they are in the mood, and they also are a better shooting team. So I'd like to see them, get healthy, and we can see how good they are, because I think this team has a lot of potential. So right now we are going to head off of here. It has hit the hour point. So we will be back again at the half. We will be on the Illini Guys YouTube channel and X. And then at the end of the game, we will be on the STL Sports Central YouTube channel and our X as well. So we would love to talk. Let's hope that Illinois can finish off Wisconsin, punch them in the mouth early, and get this game done, as Illinois tries to march for a consecutive 9-3 regular season, which would be just incredible and would put Illinois in the once in the history of the football program of being able to have double-digit wins back-to-back, which hasn't happened in the 120 years that Illinois has played football. So that would be really cool to see for the first time, but they got to start it tonight in Wisconsin. As a team that's had a rough year, they're not going to want to lose to a former coach, and they should be fired up. So join us then. Until then, folks, go Illini.